بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, we'll continue a small halaqah that we've been having for the last 10 nights, going over the abiyat of Imam Abdul Wahid ibn Ashir rahimahullah in his book Al-Murshid Al-Mu'in ala Dururi min Ulum Ad-Din, which is a book written in the Maliki madhab by the scholar that has the number of verses are equal to the number of anbiya. And he did that, yatabarak bihim. And in this small text, inshallah, we plan after Ramadan to start every night in the masjid, at least 3 times a week, a small dars, 20 minutes long. So we'll have, for example, a dars in fiqh, a lesson in fiqh, we'll have a lesson in hadith, and then, or Arabic, and then a lesson in tazkiyatun nafs. So we'll start that, inshallah, after Ramadan, in the middle of September. And we'll go through some of the classical texts, inshallah, with the brothers. And then also we'll begin to read from the books of hadith in the future. But one of the books that we hope to read from is his book. And what he did in this book is he covered 3 fundamental areas which are considered fard ayn, individual obligations. Number 1 is al-aqidah as-sahihah, to have the proper theological understanding of things around us. Number 2 is fiqh al-ibadat, the proper understanding of how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then number 3, tazkiyatun nafs, how to purify the soul from evil. All of these are individual obligations. And as you can see, this book is little worse for the wear. Anyone who's studied with the ulama or the shuyukh, they'll have books that look like this, because the book was with them everywhere they went. In fact, once I was with a sheikh, a really good sheikh, Sheikh Mustafa al-Maliki, in what's called Hada'iq al-Ubba in Cairo. And I wanted his phone number. So I realized I didn't have any paper, I didn't have anything except this book. So I said, Sheikh, can I have your phone number? And so he said, yes. I was really happy. So I wrote his phone number on the book, because I didn't have any paper. And he was like, katabta raqmi ala kitabik, like, you wrote my number on your book? And I was like, I don't have a pen. So he said, I don't have any paper. So he said to me, you know, the knowledge is like game that you hunt. If you go to hunt and you don't have the gun, how are you going to catch anything? So next time if you come, bring paper and a pen. So I was like, okay, but I need your number anyways. So I wrote his number on my book. So the Shaykh, he begins by saying, وَتَوْبَةٌ مِّن كُلِّ ذَنْبٍ يُجْتَرِبْ, which means that every sin, which is a crime according to Sharia, we have to, يُجْتَرَبْ, we have to repent for it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. تَجِبُ فَوْرًا مُطْلَقًا وَهْوَ النَّدَمْ. And then he said that it is an obligation upon you to do so in an unrestricted sense for the sins that you know you did and you didn't, and you know that you didn't, you're not aware that you've done. وَهُوَ النَّدَامِ, and the first condition is to feel regret, remorse for that sin. بِشَرْطِ إِقْلَاعِ أي بِتَرْكِ هَذَا ذَنْبِ. The next condition is to leave the sin, right? So, and وَعَدَمْ إِصْرَارِ, and not to continue doing it. So those are the first 3 conditions of tawbah, and he started with that. And then he, rahimahullah ta'ala, said, وَحَاسْرُ التَّقْوَى اجْتِنَابٌ وَإِمْتِثَالُ. And the second condition for being on Sirat al-Mustaqim, according to the Shaykh in his poem, is taqwa. He said, التَّقْوَى اجْتِنَابٌ وَإِمْتِثَالُ. Ijtinab, nawahihi subhanahu wa ta'ala, to leave the things which Allah has forbidden us. وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرُّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. And then he said, وَامْتِثَالُ. And of course, because durat al-shi'r, the end of the line is sukun, وَامْتِثَال, because of rajas, here means to emulate the injunctions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us. فِي ظَاهِرٍ وَبَاطِنٍ بِذَا تُنَالٍ. Inward and outward. So he said there are 4 types of taqwa. The outward awamir, the outward nawahi. The inward awamir and the inward nawahi. Idhan al-hasiru, he said, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, and this is good for me, وَجَاءَتِ الْأَقْسَامُ حَقًّا أَرْبَعَةً. And the next line he said, idhan, so the forms of taqwa, or the parts of taqwa, are 4. وَهْيَ لِسَارِكِ سَبِيلُ الْمَنْفَعَةِ. And for the one who seeks to be successful in the hereafter, then he should work towards taqwa. And then we said the rest of the poem, at least a good portion of it, he dedicates to explaining what is taqwa, the outer and the inner. And that's where we stopped. And he says, يَغُضُّ نَيْهُ عَنِ الْمَحَارِمِ, that the person should, I don't think lowering the gaze actually is the best translation, because غض here is majaz, and what it means is to, divert your gaze. Because we know in America, sometimes looking down is worse than sometimes looking up, wallahi. It's just a reality. So it's more about diverting the gaze than lowering the gaze from what's forbidden. And we talked about the 3 things that are forbidden for the glance last time. يَكُفُّ سَمْعُهُ عَنِ الْمَآثِمِ, and that he keeps his or her ears from listening to evil things. This is important, what I'm talking about now, because the goal of the month is taqwa. How to be muttaqi. لا يوجد مسبب إلا بسببه in mantiq. You cannot find an outcome except with its cause. The cause of taqwa is imtithal ijtinab. Is to obey Allah and to avoid disobeying Him. Natijatuhuma taqwallah. And that's why we say that taqwa is a synonym of ta'ah. That taqwa is a synonym of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I heard this from some of our mashaykh hafidhuhumullah. And then he says that يَكُفُّ سَمْعُهُ عَنِ الْمَآثِمِ كَغِيبَةٍ. The first thing he mentioned is ghiba. And we talked about what is ghiba. We ask Allah Ta'ala bil-afiyah. Namimatin. And we talked about what is namima, to spread tales about people. Oh man, this imam was talking about this dude, man. And we want to create problems. Usually what I noticed when I was studying overseas, the problem is very rarely amongst the imams, but the followers of the imams. They spread fitna. And they make namima. I remember in Cairo there were 2 great qurra. And a problem started between them, and we found out one of the people was Aman al-Dawla. Aman al-Dawla, one of the people who worked for Hosni Mubarak's regime. He would go to the sheikh and say, "Sheikh, can yahki an kada?" This sheikh was saying this about you. Wallahi, ya wallah, ya wa idhan. And then unfortunately, the sheikh made a mistake and he reacted. And then he took what that sheikh said, yukabbiru ma qal. Then he aggrandized what he said and went to the other sheikh and said, "This guy was talking about you." And actually a problem started because of these people. And some of them, they are shayateen. If you make trouble between the imams, know that you are from the shayateen. You are assisting Iblis. Because you are helping to make tadmir dinillah. And you will never make tadmir dinillah. لأن الله حي لا يموت. So you're actually wasting your time. But you are hurting yourself in the hereafter. May Allah protect us, inshaAllah, from that. And when we put things on Facebook or Twitter, or we say things about other du'at, and we know it's not true. وَنِيَّتُنَا أَن نَسْتَوْقِدْ نَارَ فِتْنَةٍ. Then we are bad people. We are the enemies of Allah and His Messenger. We are the enemies of those who inherited this deen from Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he said, namima, zurin means false witness, kadib, to lie. Lisanuhu ahra bi tarki ma julib. And then he says in the last part of this line that your tongue has more of a right to stay away from those things than your hearing. Then he says, yahfadu batnahu min al-harami, that he should avoid the haram with his stomach. And we said this is 2 things. This is 2 things according to the majority. Whatever was slaughtered, bismi ghayrillah. Whatever was slaughtered in the name other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number 2, we talked about those things which are taken from people through oppression. And this is something, unfortunately, I found some of the modern fuqaha neglected talking about it. We got caught up in ala, dhabh al-ala, which according to the Shafi'is is jaiz. To say bismillah or not, jaiz in the Ahl Sunnah. But all Ahl Sunnah agreed. You are not allowed to eat the food that was taken through means of oppression. So even if it was madbuh, and someone took it through dhulm, and that's why we said Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, refused to eat from the gardens, the basatin of Damascus, because he knew that the leader of the Mamalik, that Mamalik, had taken that in oppression, and he considered it forbidden. Even though that food is aslahu halal wa tayyib. So we should also be careful, and that's why I said Muslims, we should be involved in like Fair Trade Boston. We should be involved in organizations that are looking after the rights of Muslims. Now Nike has 12 sweatshops in one village in Indonesia. And we plan here to go in Khuruj, inshallah. We plan to take our youth here in Boston. We're not going to go only to Granada and, Paris and, nice places. We plan to take a group of Muslims from here to visit the Muslim sweatshops in the world and see with our eyes what's happening to people who are being, not just Muslims, but for us, our religious community, to see what's happening, because it's not allowed to eat from those things. So when you're wearing Nike and then you're screaming about La ilaha illallah, you're a parody of justice, a walking hypocrite. May Allah protect us, inshallah, from that. And then he says, rahimahullah, he says, and this is important, يَتْرُكُ مَا شُبِّهَ بِاهْتِمَامِ. And as I said, this is a problem that we see now. I found myself also sometimes having to be careful about this, that what is doubted, now people are taking an easy opinion towards it. They're very laxed on shubuhat. But the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever taraka shubuhat faqad istabra'a li dinihi wa irdi. Whoever left the doubtful, they are safe. Doesn't mean always, because as I gave a lecture before about converts to Islam, sometimes for us the shubha is the asl. Sometimes when you become Muslim, initially doubtful is your default. You don't have a choice, and we should not be hard on these people. One sister, she came and said, what somebody recently told me, I have to leave Islam. I'm not a good Muslim. I said, no, take it easy. Then he says, يَحْفَظُ فَرْجَهُ وَيَتَّقِ الشَّهِيدِ. He said, and then he protects his private parts, and this is where we stopped. And her private parts means two things. Number one, that the person, he covers himself properly. That they dress properly. I hear a lot of people get mad at the sisters for how they dress, but I never hear anybody scold the brothers for their skinny jeans or their effeminate clothing. Very effeminate clothing now. And the Prophet ﷺ said that he cursed the man who acts like, who imitates a woman, and a woman who imitates the man in their dress. So we should be very careful, not only for the sisters but for the brothers. But unfortunately, when we come to the mosque, how we dress is indicative of our niyyah. So if I come to the mosque with like really tight clothing and I'm a sister, I don't think I'm trying to catch Allah. I have to be really honest, unless I don't know, unless I'm new, unless I'm not informed. That's a different issue. Or I don't have any other type of clothing. Maybe I'm suffering financially. That's a reality we can all empathize with. But if I'm perfectly able to dress according to the right way, and I come to the mosque like Nicki Minaj with a hijab on, then I have to really ask myself, why am I here? Am I here to catch Allah or to catch a man? And that's why we should fear Allah. There's nothing wrong with trying to get married and find a good spouse, as long as it's done through the right ways. And if I'm a brother and I spend an hour and a half to put gel in my hair, yeah, and I'm more metrosexual than David Beckham, and then I'm coming to the mosque, I need to ask myself, really, why am I coming to the masjid? Doesn't mean we should come to the masjid looking like slobs. I love to wear a suit and tie and look good as best I can, as the Prophet encouraged his companions, or a nice thobe that's ironed. Inna Allaha jamilu yuhibbul jamal. But there's a difference between looking regal and trying to look, like I'm trying to catch the opposite person. And that could be indicative of my niyyah for coming to the masjid. And we ask Allah to let us come to the masjid for Him alone and seeking His bounties. And He says, في البطش والسعي لممنوع يريد أي يتقي الشهيد في البطش والسعي لممنوع يريد. That when a person wants to do something wrong, whether with their hand or with their limbs or with their effort, the way to repel that is to remember Allah is watching them. Muraqaba. And ruquba is the woman who has only one child. The sister, she had tried, my own sister-in-law, 14 years. Finally, she had one child. Wallahi, mashallah, the way she's raising this child, because she loves this child. It's ni'mah from Allah. It's ruquba. So also muraqaba, the one who yahtam bi rabbihi kama ihtammat biwaladihi, ay ar-ruquba. So the person is constantly focused on Allah. That's why the same word comes from ruquba and muraqaba. So once a man came to Ibrahim ibn Adham and he asked him, I cannot stop sinning. For Ibrahim said to him, do 3 things and you'll stop. He said, what? He said, number 1, if you want to sin, leave the earth. Go live somewhere else. Go live in a different creation. He said, Shaykh, that's impossible. Lillahi ma fi samawati wa ma fi al-ard. Earth belongs to Allah. He said, how can you disobey the one who let you live rent-free? Someone, sisters, if you can hold it down, inshallah. Unfortunately, every night we have to do this, and every night we have a good number of sisters who complain about you because you continually raise your voices. If you want to talk, mashallah, sisters, I know you're happy to see your sisters in Islam. There's a cafe there, you can go and talk. But the masjid is not actually, it's makruh to raise your voice in the masjid like this. It's makruh. Now if you're trying to silence your child, or this is a perfectly acceptable situation. But other than that, during the dars also, dars of the shaykh, you have adab with the shaykh, and you have adab with the ilm, and you have adab with your children. They're watching you, they learn from you. So if you cannot be quiet while the imam is speaking, how do you expect them to be quiet when you are speaking to them when they're older? كَمَا تَدِينُ tudan. So, and unfortunately, a lot of our sisters complain. They said, I asked. One sister, someone slapped her yesterday. Can you imagine? She asked a sister, please be quiet, and she slapped her. What type of ajr will you get in Ramadan? Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, every Muslim is forgiven in Ramadan, and one of the persons he said who is not, who رَفَعَ يَدَهُ عَلَى أَخِي الْمُسْلِمِ. He's the person who hit another Muslim. So, wallahi, what type of qudwa are you going to be if you are constantly yelling and screaming? This is not the Patriots game or the Celtics. This is dars, mush dirs fil masjid. So, jazakallahu khair, may Allah reward you inshallah. And for those sisters who are trying to listen and be diligent, may Allah give you more patience inshallah. So he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, that the person, Ibrahim Adham, told him, if you want to do something wrong, then move to another land. He said, every piece of land is created by God. He said, exactly, how can you disobey the person who let you live rent-free? If someone allowed us to live in their house rent-free, we will not like walk into the kitchen, lick the pots and throw everything out of the refrigerator. We'll be really careful how we act. MashaAllah, they let me live here rent-free. I have to be like, really, you'll make the bed right, nothing on the floor. Then he said, number two, if you want to do something wrong, don't eat from the rizq Allah gave you. Eat, let someone else give you food. And he said to him, Huwa khayru raziqeen wa huwa razzaq ya shaykh. He's the only one who gives me food. He said, exactly, how can you disobey the one who let you live rent-free and fed you? You don't bite the hand that what? That feeds you. Then finally he said, Zidni, give me something else. So Shaykh, he told him, go somewhere where Allah cannot see you and do this ma'asi. And he said, Shaykh, I cannot do that. He said, exactly, how can you disobey the one who gives you rent for free, food for free, and sees you, everything that you do? And then he said, stop, it's enough. And then the man, he said, after that, I never went back to those evil things I did. So the Shaykh is saying, وَيَتَّقِ الشَّهِيدِ فِي الْبَطْشِ وَسَعِي لِمَمْنُعٍ يُرِيدُ. That this is the key to stopping that. Now, as we finish, because it's almost time for Isha, something really important. He says, وَيُوقِفُ الْأُمُورَ حَتَّى يَعْلَمَ مَا اللَّهُ فِيهِ النَّبِيهِ قَدْ حَكَمَ. That he should stop at every affair until he knows what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ruled on that thing. Is it permissible? Is it haram? As we move on just quickly, he moves now from the outer muharramat to the inner muharramat. From those things which we are not allowed to do outside with our limbs to the inner. And there's a reason for this. Because, and this is why he says, Yashabu Shaykh al-Arifi, that the person should be with the Shaykh who can guide them to what's right. Because to start on the inner is considered easier initially than the outer. Someone should start on the outer things first, those outer qualities that he has, because he can change them. Others said no, to start on the outer is easier, so you get a sense of confidence in yourself, and then you move to the hard part. So the Shaykh, he starts with the outer, according to that opinion, because it's easier to work on them. But the inner requires patience. So he moves from the outer muharramat to the inner muharramat, and he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, very beautifully here. يطهر. He says, يطهر قلب من الرياء, that the person should protect himself from riya, from showing off. And they said that the Shaykh here, Shaykh al-Azhari, one of the Shaykh of ours from Azhar, he said, في قربه هو ترك الإخلاص فيما بملاحظة غير الله, is to leave sincerity because you pay attention to something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'll finish with a nice story. Once one of our teachers told us that there was a brother, he wanted to get married, so he decided to go to the masjid. It's okay to go to the masjid if you want to get married. You'll find, inshallah, salihah, mu'mina billah. We ask Allah inshallah to help our youth with this situation, and ask Allah to guide our parents to lower their standards, to make marriage for them easy inshallah. So he came to the masjid there. There was one girl he saw at high school, and he decided, I'm going to go impress her father, so I'm going to go pray a lot of nafil in the masjid. So he went and he started praying nafil in the masjid, and one day her father said, MashaAllah, look at this young pious boy. He's very pious. He's such a good, honorable soul. Always he guards his nawafil. And then his friend said, yeah. And then the boy in salah, my sheikh said, وَهُوَ صَائِمَ الْيَوْمِ كَذَلِكَ. The boy, he said, and also he's fasting today too. The boy he was talking about, he said, it was praying in salah. He said to the man, and I'm fasting too also. So this is example of riya, which is not acceptable. We should make ibadah only for Allah. And if we feel some waswas in our heart, we should eschew it from ourselves. But tomorrow night, inshallah, we'll continue to talk about the uyub of the qulub, those evil qualities of the heart that we should eschew. We talked about the outer qualities now. Now we'll talk about the inner qualities tomorrow. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala an yunawwir qulubana inshallah, wa yuthabbita qadamana. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yahdina ila subul السبيل الذي يوصلنا إليه سبحانه وتعالى. كما نسأله أن يرزقنا بفتوحات العارفين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد رحمة العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.